Hello and welcome to part four of Premier League Youngsters to Watch. This, of course, on Redmen Academy. If you haven't watched part one, two, and three, I suggest you go over and watch them. We're on to our final five teams. We'll start with Southampton. James, obviously, working through this in alphabetical order. Who was your first pick? It's obviously an academy that's brought through some talent over a few years.
Yeah,
Chamberlain at Liverpool, of course, being one of those. Who was your pick?
so my first pick was Jake Vokins, he's a 20-year-old left back. He was sort of seen as being the backup player this season. Actually, obviously got rid of Matt Target for about 14 million to Aston Villa, but he hasn't made too many appearances for them. He's only appeared twice for the first team in the cup competitions, but he's only made 10 appearances for the Premier League Two side as well. So I think he's been around that first team a lot, the same way Nico Williams has for us. But he's just struggled to get game time. But he's held in really high regard, and they seem to really want him to sort of stay and challenge for that spot. And he is seen as after Ryan Bertrand, he's the player that's there as backup. So he's definitely one to keep an eye on. So I think next year will be his breakout season for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch what happens with him, whether he's being nurtured into that role or what. But as you say, he does seem to be the backup choice, but he's not appeared too many times for the
No.
first, so it's difficult to comment on it right now. Um, my first pick was Kane Ramsey. He's a player that joined Southampton in July 2017 from Chelsea. Obviously, we picked up on how good Chelsea's academy is in part one and two. He's established himself really within the Southampton under 18s team. He can play in both right back and centre back. Um, they try and build around him at the back. He has the ability to play in multiple positions. And I think there'll be a lot of eyes kept on him over the next year or two. He's currently at Shrewsbury on loan. He appeared there 5 times before, obviously, the season was halted. Spent the first half of the season playing for Southampton's under 23s, and he was given his first team debut in the latter stages of 2018 on the 30th of December against Man City. So there's no obviously tougher game to be thrown into. So Ralph Hasenhüttl clearly has faith in this lad. He was just 18 years old and 81 days at the time. This obviously made him the youngest starter in the Premier League during the 2018-19 season. Listen, we've not really heard this name too much after then. But as I said before, for a player to be thrown into a game like that, it's clear that Ralph Hasenhüttl likes the look of this guy. He's currently at Shrewsbury, as I say, playing football in League One. He's been there since the start of 2020, really. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this kid and where he goes next. So what do you make of him, James?
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a good talent, and obviously he's got good pedigree. But it's just a matter of consistently being with that first team, building on that on his debut 18 months ago now, and looking to kick on really. Because once you've got your foot in the door, you've just got to completely up your game. Because it's one thing getting in, it's the next thing consistently being a part, and the sooner he can do that, the better really.
Who was your second pick?
My second pick was Callum Slattery. So he's a 21-year-old midfielder. He feels like he's been around for years, but a Football Manager legend. He's on loan at De Graafschap now in second division in Holland because he was expected to break into the first team this season and it didn't quite work out for him. So he's obviously sent out to get some senior football under his belt. And he's appeared 5 times for them, obviously before football was halted, scoring once, 14 appearances in the Premier League Two at the start of the season. So, he's got plenty of football under his belt and his contract was set to expire this summer. Before he went out to Holland, he signed a 2-year extension. So I think he's a player that the club clearly want to keep hold of, and they can see him as a good player. He's a good technical player, but he needs minutes now. He's 21, obviously. He should get some first team minutes next season if he can just up his game a little bit, because he was a cracking youngster and he has been around for so long. But it's just time is not really on his side anymore.
Yeah, he's a player that it's getting towards the day where he'll probably have to make a decision on
Yeah,
where his future lies. And I don't think he's too far away from the Southampton first team, but
yeah,
successful loan moves like the one he's on at the minute, there
yeah,
need to be a success to help him get towards
yeah,
that Southampton first team. And as you say, I don't think he's too far away, but as you say, he's been around for such a long time,
yeah,
and it must be difficult for a player in that sort of situation. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with this lad.
yeah.
Um, I've got Cornelius Hansen as my pick.
Okay.
Creative midfielder. He's 18 years old. Can play on either wing as well. He's been playing well in Southampton's youth teams over the past couple of seasons and continued it well. He continued in a similar vein at the start of the season. It sort of petered off a bit. Um, he's well known within the Norway national setup as well. Obviously, Norway have some brilliant youngsters coming through at the moment. He's represented them on 5 occasions at under 18s level, scoring twice. He's also played for his country's under 17 side in the Euros in 2018. And I think he's a brilliant player. And, this is probably a player that's not as close to the first team as your picks. But I think he can be a really good and important player for Southampton in the future. As we say, Norway have brought through some cracking players in recent years, especially the last two or so. And this may be another star that they've got coming through. James, there's a player, obviously, Jan Valery, who we could have easily
Yeah.
talked about here. He's come through at Southampton under Ralph Hasenhüttl in the last couple of seasons. What do you make of Valery and his start to life in the Premier League?
I really do rate him. He looks like a cracking player. Obviously, he's broke through at a really quite exciting time for the club. They've got a really progressive manager who wants to play good football, and okay, their form hasn't been great. They are very much a team in transition, trying to move away from that selling club model to a team which wants to be on the up and challenging for the top half of the table, probably where they should be. But it's tricky right now, but he's made the most of his opportunity, same as Michael Obafemi as well,
Yeah,
who's a very good young player. But they are first team players now, and it's good that they're seen obviously as being capable of playing, on a weekly basis or whenever the opportunity arises. And there are examples for the lads who we've mentioned that need to look up and think, okay, if I perform, the opportunities are going to be there.
absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. I think he's a cracking player, and he's done well with Southampton in his first couple of seasons. As you say, they've been struggling at times, and he's been a man that they've relied on, and he's done a good job. But
Yeah,
as you say, it's really an interesting time for Southampton now. Obviously, at the start of the season, they looked like they might be in a bit of a relegation scrap at the bottom of the table, but they turned it around sort of in the middle of the season. And they've been a bit inconsistent at times, but I
yeah,
think Ralph Hasenhüttl is a cracking manager, and it'll be
very
interesting to
good
see
manager.
how they take Southampton. Moving on to Spurs, then
Yeah,
Tottenham, and there was a lad that we obviously both picked here who I don't think
yeah,
we could pick out. It's Troy Parrott.
yeah,
I think he's a lad. He's a name that many people have heard. He's a name that's been spoken about a lot in recent weeks, months, because obviously Tottenham's shortage with a lot of injuries. He's a player that obviously I think was disrespected by Jose Mourinho a few weeks ago.
yeah,
Obviously, a lot of people were wondering why he wasn't getting many minutes, and Mourinho turned around and said he's 18. He should be thankful of any minute he gets in the Premier League. He shouldn't think just because we've got injuries getting the team. He's a player that we've both been able to watch play against Liverpool this season, obviously
yeah,
in the Youth Cup. He's a player, James, who I think is of enormous talent and a player that I think will
yeah,
break next season. I think he'll go out on loan personally.
yeah.
What do you think of Troy Parrott and his season this year?
I've said a few times on the podcast, haven't we? I really rate the player. He seems like a cracking youngster, but it's obviously a shame that he's been with the first team so much, but he's not got the appearances. So he's missed out on so much game time with their youth side. He's only, I think, made 11 appearances all season across all competitions, across all levels. He scored 11 goals, as far as I'm aware, but he's missed out on a lot of minutes. So he's suffering the same way that Curtis Jones has, I think, and Harvey Elliott to an extent where they're very close to breaking through, but they're just not close enough. And I think he needs a loan move next season.
I've got his stats here, James, and as you say, he's struggled a bit because he's been with the first team so much. So he's played in so many different competitions, and he's got an appearance here or there. So his stats probably don't actually add up to what they should do because he's played 4 games in the UEFA Youth League and
Yeah,
scored 6 goals and got 1 assist. That's where he's really been firing this
yeah,
season. He's appeared twice off the bench in the Premier League, but only played 6 minutes. In Premier League 2, he's only got the 2 appearances, but scored 3 goals.
yeah,
In the FA Cup, played 1 game, no goals. Same with the FL Cup. And then in the FA Youth Cup, he's played 1 game and scored 2 goals, which was obviously against us. And it's one of them situations, James, where obviously you can see from his youth appearances here, he's played obviously 7 games and scored 11 goals. But with obviously
yeah,
first appearances in there as well, it looks like 11 games and 11 goals. It's a player that has probably outgrown youth football, or at least
yeah,
is definitely starting to outgrow youth football, and needs to get regular first team football in. And as we've said before, definitely needs a loan. I think he'd benefit from that massively. And I think if it wasn't for Tottenham's striker shortage, we may have seen him go out on loan in January.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, obviously, last season he was brilliant. He got 19 goals in 27 games last year, and he's carried it on this season. And when he's been given the opportunity, he's performed. And it's obviously we've seen that players have struggled sort of bouncing between the first team and the academy, but it hasn't really affected him. And he's got that mentality where once he gets some first team football consistently, he's just going to be an absolute star. You can just see it the way he plays. He plays off the shoulder. He likes drifting inside, he likes drifting outside. I think maybe a loan to the Championship side next season would suit him really well.
Well, we spoke on part 3, I believe, about obviously rising stars, best youngsters in the world according to goals list. Troy Parrott obviously 40th on there, and it's clear
Yeah.
to see he is a very good player at youth level.
Mm-hmm.
But as we say, he needs more first team minutes, and
Yeah.
notoriously, Mourinho is known for not necessarily giving young players minutes,
Yeah.
and we want his career damaged by that. We've seen with Ryan Brewster this season. Obviously, he was hyped up before the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Was returning from an injury and struggled to get a consistent minutes together. And he's now gone out on loan to Swansea where he's getting those consistent minutes and he's scoring goals there.
Yeah.
And let's hope Troy Parrott does something similar next season.
Yeah.
My second pick, James, was Malachi Walcott, centre back for
Mm-hmm.
Tottenham. We've seen obviously 21-year-old Tanganga come through this season. There's been an issue with Jose Mourinho thinking that the centre backs don't have enough pace, and Tanganga is obviously versatile. He can play centre back, he can play left back. I think he's done very well. Tanganga he had an impressive debut against Liverpool earlier on in the season. Malachi, obviously 18, so 3 years younger than Tanganga. He to his name as well. He's 2018. His professional debut for Tottenham against Leipzig, coming off the bench in the late stages of the game. This is a player that I think Mourinho will be looking towards. Obviously, I mentioned there that they've had a bit of an issue with their centre backs this season, and that may be an area that Jose Mourinho looks to improve in the summer or in the next few transfer windows. But he'll definitely be looking at the academy and seeing what's there. And I think Malachi Walcott is a very good young player, James.
Yeah, he's very suited to obviously senior football. He's got here he's 6'2", which you don't tend to see in a lot of the young lads, and he's got that on his side where he's not going to have to wait around in youth football for a while. He's ready to sort of be thrown in. He's ready to challenge those centre backs that Mourinho doesn't seem to trust. He doesn't like. I don't think he likes how slow and how sort of stuck in their ways their current players are. With these youngsters, he can mould them into these sort of ball playing centre backs that he wants them to be.
Absolutely. Who was your second pick, James?
So I had Harvey White. He's an 18-year-old midfielder, a proper like box-to-box midfielder too. He sits a little bit deeper, will get the ball, then push up with it. But then he's technically superb. I've got here he's very good on set pieces, and he's played for various England youth sides up to under 19 level, I think, so far. He's played last season. He played 29 appearances across various youth groups, had 7 goals and 7 assists. Then this season, he has 7 goals and 4 assists, mainly playing for the under 23s now, so he's really kicked on. He's been playing in the Youth League too, and he's been playing in the Youth Cup and EFL Trophy. So he's getting obviously valuable minutes in the EFL Trophy against, much older players. Something that I think we maybe didn't take best opportunity of this season with our youngsters. But he looks like a cracking player, and he's not looking phased at all by the sort of step up to a higher level. And if there's anyone in that midfield who's going to be breaking through next, I think he's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, as you say, a player obviously box to box, playing in midfield and getting some good numbers in goals and assists from obviously midfield. And he does sound like a very good player, and obviously very young as well, playing in the under-23. So he's got time on his side, and we'll do a few more videos over the next few weeks on how this lengthy layoff, what might be a lengthy layoff due to the global pandemic, may affect obviously young footballers. But as we say, this lad is a man with time on his side, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes and how he develops. And I think he'll probably be a player that stays with Tottenham's under-23s next season, James, or do you reckon he'll go out on loan?
I think he'll stay there for now. I don't think there's any need to sort of rush him through yet. He's still learning. And he's still, obviously, he can play in defence too. He can play centre-back, he can play left-back. So I think it's just a matter of learning his best position, learning, how to play the way Spurs want him to play, and then sending him out on loan maybe the season after. Because next season he might get the odd, obviously, cup competition too for the first team, as well as being consistently within the 23s.
It's difficult for Spurs at the minute, isn't it? Because obviously they're so desperate for a trophy, and next season you think they're going to be pushing for a trophy, so it's harder to get in there. Even their cup squads, because they have to go so strong to try and get a trophy. But as you say, this guy, there's no need to rush him whatsoever. He's very young, and that I expect him to stay with the under-23s next season, continue to grow as a player, and find himself in his best position, like you say. So it'll be interesting what happens going forward. Next up, Watford. I found Watford a bit harder to find these players. I don't know about you, James. I got Lewis Gordon, an 18-year-old who can play at left back or on the left side of midfield. He joined St Albans City, obviously in the National League South, not too far from Watford. On loan in 2020 at the start of 2020, but of course now that season's been voided, and they were fighting to stay up at the time. He signed professional terms with the Hornets in March 2018, and was named Academy Player of the Year at the end of that campaign, so the 2017-2018 season. This lad James looks like a player for the future. Obviously, won Academy Player of the Year at a young age, and he's now, he's looking like a decent player, and he's getting loan moves to obviously Conference South side. So it's clear to see that he's trying to get more first team minutes and improve himself as a player, similarly to Reece Williams, obviously at Liverpool.
I think obviously once you go down to the Conference, it's not about playing at a high level. It's more just getting used to senior football, getting used to the physicality of it. Once you've got that and you've mastered that, then you can make the step up the divisions. Then go up to League One, maybe the Championship, because they are very hard leagues. And if you've not got it in you to go for the whole duration, you'll be absolutely burnt out by about Christmas time, because the game just comes thick and fast, and they get more and more intense as the season goes on because there's so much to play for. Whereas in the Conference, he has that sort of space to perfect his game, bulk up a little bit, fill out, and get used to playing alongside men and not just the kids that he's used to playing alongside.
Absolutely, as you say, it's not the best level in terms of footballing ability, but it will give him valuable skills going forwards. And it's first team minutes at the end of the day, and
Exactly.
Against big physical people. So it'll be interesting to see what this lad turns into. Your first pick, James?
Well, João Pedro. Obviously only arrived in December from Fluminense for 2 million. That's set to rise to 8 million. But he's already valued at about 16 million already when you look at online. Massive talent. Announced himself back in May for obviously their first team, and over the course of their season he had 9 goals and 2 assists in 33 senior games. Was looked at by Liverpool, City, Barcelona, and obviously they confirmed the deal over the summer. and they had to wait until he turned 18 to bring him over. But apparently Liverpool were looking to sort of activate a clause in his contract where we buy him for 20 million the moment he signed for Watford. And obviously we chose not to exercise that because it would have been, 10 times what Watford had paid.
Yeah.
But he's seen as sort of being, the next Richarlison for them, where they've spent potentially a lot of money. But he potentially has that ability to be that good, if not better, because he can score with his left, he can score with his right foot, he can score spectacular overhead goals. He's just an incredible player.
Yeah, he's a man that I remember the name of, and I remember hearing about at the time of the transfer, and obviously our link with him and whatnot. And it's a player that definitely you should remember the name, because I think he's got a big future ahead of him. And you listen to the figures there that we've just spoken about, the numbers. It sounds like certainly a player to watch, and the talent that he possesses is obviously, there's a lot of it. And I think you only have to listen to the names of the teams he was linked with to see how good of a player he is. And he's picked Watford, and I think it's clear that he obviously sees Watford as a path to a bigger side and a team where short term he'll probably get more minutes and a better a better career right now. Whereas he can always make that step up in a few years, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Your second pick, James?
My second pick it's quite a mouthful, this. Sonny Blue, Low Everton. 17-year-old attacking midfielder. I know, it's hard to get all that out. Born in London, but he's a Scottish under-19 international, known for really good technique, quick on his feet, good eye for goal, and he's playing at under-23 level already this season. Been scoring a lot for the under-18s as well. He's looking to cement a place within the 23s, and he's been bouncing around both of them, but he's been playing very well for them. He's got quite a few goals, quite a few assists. He's coming off the bench quite a lot as well, and contributing. He's being that player that they're turning to late on in the game, and he's changing it for them, which is probably all he can do. He's being asked to do that, and he's doing it perfectly. Described by former head of the academy, Darryl Saul, as an incredible talent and one of the most natural players he's worked with. So he's clearly at the club. He's seen as a very big talent, and he's had a lot of other big teams. I think Borussia Dortmund I've seen that were linked with going after him as well. So he's been attracting a lot of attention, and I think being part of Scotland's under-19 side will have helped that, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to follow him as well, and see if anything comes of that link to Borussia Dortmund, or whether he decides to stay at obviously Watford. I got Dan Phillips, 19 from Trinidad and Tobago. He won Watford Academy Player of the Season last season. He's described as a tough tackling centre midfielder. He's got a determined attitude and applicated that well last year. That was the reasoning for him winning Academy Player of the Year. He went on a short-term loan deal to Emil Hempstead at the start of the season. And he came back to Watford and has been playing for their youth sides. He joined the club as an under-14. He's described as a player who's very comfortable on the ball and has a very good technique. He breaks lines in possession very well, creating attacking opportunities for the team. This is a lad that, as I said at the start, I don't know too much about. He's a player who obviously, as I say, won that accolade at the end of last season. This season, you can't find too many stats on him, but as I said before, Watford tried to loan him out at the start of the season, and he looks like a player that may be a good player in the future. He's only 19, He's only 19, so again, there's no need to push him. Do I think he'll make it at Premier League level? Probably not. But I still think that there's a player there, and I think he can make it in amongst the leagues in the EFL.
Oh, for sure, yeah. There's no shame at all in not quite making the grade. Premier League side at all, because the level's that high, and even when we look at players and think they're not the best players in the Premier League, they're still very, very good. And the difference between a below average Premier League player and your average Championship player is huge. Like, the difference is colossal, and I think players are under a lot of pressure to instantly become Premier League level players, but being a Championship player is a brilliant achievement on its own, isn't it?
Absolutely. As you say, I think I don't really think he'll make championship level either.
Okay.
But I still think he's a very good player there. And as I say, you know, the great thing about youth football is that one year this player might look like a player that's the level of League One or two, but
Mhm.
then in the future he could have one very very good season that puts
Yeah.
him in Watford's plans and Nigel Pearson's plans, and he could then become a Premier League player. So it'll be very interesting to see
Yeah.
what happens with Dan Phillips. And as I said in part three, we'll be following all these names throughout the season
Yeah.
next year and throughout pre-season to see where everyone ends up and what happens with their careers. So it'll be interesting to follow him. Your second pick, James?
We need to move on to West Ham now. My first pick for West Ham is Amadou Diallo.
Okay.
He's a 17-year-old left midfielder. Joined the academy at 10 years old. He made his debut for under 18s at age 14. Then just a year later, when he was 15, he made a debut for under 23s as well. He's progressed rapidly through their youth ranks, and he's sort of been compared to Raheem Sterling in the way he likes to sort of burst into the box, look for the overlap on the outside, beat players, directly, and not, look to slow down when he meets a player. He'll try and get past them as quickly as possible and then decide what to do later on. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists in 14 games, mainly in the Premier League too, even though he's only 17. And everything I've read about him, he seems like someone that they really expect to make an impact on the first team, within the next sort of 2 years. He's that good. And he signed a long-term contract in January as soon as he turned 17.
Yeah, he's a player that obviously, if you know youth football, you've probably heard a lot about. He's a player I came across as well when I was looking, but I had a feeling you'd pick him. He looks like an outstanding talent, as you say, just 17 years old. I think give him a couple of years, and we'll start seeing him in the West Ham first team, as you say, already playing consistently at under 23s level in Premier League 2, and getting big comparisons to big players like Raheem Sterling as well. So we spoke before about how that can damage a player, but it can also make a player too. And listen, this kid is, as we say, still very young, but he turned 17, signed a pro contract straight away. He's a player that obviously West Ham are looking to as maybe the future of the club, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with this lad in the coming years. I went for a goalkeeper, James. Um, Let me try and pronounce his name without butchering it. Christian Hedgie, 17 years old. West Ham have an abundance of young talent at goalkeeper level with Nathan Trott and Joseph Anang, 2 names that are very good youth keepers as well. But they also have in their under 18s Daniel Gennady and Serian Sane as well. So they've got some very good goalkeepers. But this is definitely one to watch out for. He's 17 years old. West Ham saw off competition from Manchester United and Real Madrid to sign him. He's from Hungary. He's trained with the first team and played more with the 23 this season. And his stocks continue to rise, as I say, as young as 17. There's various reasons he's been training with the first team this season. We know West Ham have had goalkeeper problems, but for a 17-year-old to get that time with the first team is very valuable. This is a lad who is at a club where, as I said before, they've been struggling for goalkeepers this season, and going forward, they may look down and look at their youth goalkeepers and see that they have an abundance of talent down there, and hopefully one of them is ready to step up sooner rather than later. One thing that I think is important with this lad is that he isn't rushed through. It's good to have him with the first team every now and again, but a goalkeeper is a dangerous position. Their careers can be damaged so easily. We've seen it over the last few years. Karius is a prime example for that. That season he made awful mistakes at times, and most obviously being in Kiev. But at times he made some brilliant saves as well. He was the Champions League. He had the most clean sheets in the Champions League that year. So there is a goalkeeper there, but it's very difficult because if you make a mistake in goal, it's very obvious. But this lad looks like a very, very good talent, and in a couple of years' time, I reckon he'll be a first-team goalkeeper at a good level.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, I think there'll be a loan coming within the next sort of year or so if he's as good as we think he is. Whether that's down in the conference as well, like you're saying, where he can get used to the physicality and command in a box, and then potentially working his way up, because you don't need to break into that first team until you're in your 20s, especially when you're a goalkeeper. You have so many years on your side. You're going to have a longer career than most of the players too, and I think that comes with the expectation that you'll step up when you're ready, as opposed to doing it because it's now or never. It'll just be a matter of, okay, he's ready. Is he better than what we've got? Maybe. And then he'll be ready to go into that first team, because there's no point letting a lad go in, letting him make a mistake, and then having the fans turn on him, especially when he's a teenager.
Absolutely. Your next pick, James?
My next pick was Veron Parks, 18-year-old striker for the under-18 side. He's got Spanish citizenship as well as English citizenship. He's got 11 goals and 6 assists in 14 matches in the league. Broke into their Premier League side a few times as well. He can play anywhere behind the striker. So he's got sort of the ability to obviously drift outside, then from the outside, then cut in on his stronger foot as well. And that's obviously going to help him going forward, isn't it? Where he's got that sort of adaptability. And I think he'll obviously have to step up next season. Obviously, what age he is to that under 23 side, because they've got quite a few older players in the 23s, especially. I think their front three are all 21 now, so they'll be expected to either move on or step up to the first team. That's going to be perfect for him to go into that team, and he'll be seen as sort of the big goal scorer, because he's got this reputation from youth football where he can score and he's so clinical.
So I went with Ben Johnson, James, who, he's 20 years old. He's thrived since, he was converted from a winger into attack-minded right back as a teenage schoolboy. He's one of them new breed of right backs and full-backs that I'm so fond of. He's been with West Ham since the age of 7, featured regularly in every age group that he's featured it. Every age group side he has featured in. He impresses everyone with his maturity, athleticism, and work ethic. He's related to former England internationals Paul Parker and Ledley King, which is mad. He made his first team debut against Manchester City in February 2019. So another youngster thrown in it against a very good side, of course. And as I said before, to you before obviously we went on air, he's had 7 games this season, 2 assists in those 7 games in Premier League 2. He can also play central midfield as well as fullback and on the wing. So he's a versatile player, which is a good asset to have when you're very young, James.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you seem to say it all the time now, but versatility is one of the biggest things you can have going for you, because it's okay being good in one position. If you've got someone, a class player ahead of you, you need to find another route into that first team. So having that under your belt and be able to show that, the first team manager that, okay, yeah, I'm good here, but I can also play here. And then when the time comes, I'll challenge for, my best position. It's all you can really ask for, isn't it?
Absolutely. Moving on to Wolves now. Who did you pick?
So I had Chem Campbell, who's, he's young midfielder, 17 years old. He's been training with the first team quite a lot this season. I know he especially did last summer too. During the off season, as he was very much part of that senior setup, whilst playing a lot with the under-18s too. Wales Youth International, joined a few years ago from Birmingham City. Obviously, he was listed as one of the top 20 best talents in the Premier League by The Guardian. And he's also been linked to Borussia Dortmund as well. So he's got that international appeal already, even though obviously he's only 17 years old. Good dribbler. He's got 2 goals in 6 matches for the under-18s and 10 appearances and 2 goals for the 23s. So he's very much stepping up before he's expected to step up.
Yeah, Wolves have got quite a few good young players at the minute, and there were so many for us to choose from. But as you say, this guy is a guy that's impressing on a global scale, impressing a lot of clubs in Europe at the age of 17. So I think this is a name that people definitely want to follow and keep an eye on, because I reckon he's going to be a good player in the future. I went with Owen Atasawi. It's a player that people have probably heard the name of. He's 19 from the US. He plays mostly in defensive midfield, but can also play centre-back and can. He progressed through the youth academy, made his senior debut for Wolves as a substitute in Wolves' final group stage match in the Europa League against Besiktas in December. He's also played 8 games in Premier League 2 this season and obviously been on the bench for Wolves at times in the Premier League. He was heavily linked with moves to clubs like Liverpool and Arsenal in January, and more in December actually. But he got a new deal at Wolves on New Year's Day. This is a lad, James, who we spoke about a few times on the youth show this season. He's a young defensive-minded midfielder who looks very, very good, and every time he plays, he seems to draw recognition from big clubs across Europe.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's being linked with PSG, Madrid, as Arsenal. He's got that versatility, as we were talking about. He's got that raw talent in his natural position too, and he's got all the makings to be a very top player. It's just a matter of getting more minutes with the first team, because he's already played quite a few times, and he just needs to cement his place in that team. It's going to be very hard to break into this up and coming Wolves side because they've got so much to play for.
There's a good that I watched a few days ago on YouTube of his performance against PSG for Wolves' youth side. I think it's brilliant. You need to go over and watch that. If you want to see what Owen Asawi is about, that video can teach you a lot. He looks a very, very good talent. And, I wonder if next year will be his breakthrough season, whether he'll go out on loan, whether he'll stay at Wolves, but get more minutes. It's going to be interesting to follow Owen Asawi and see what happens with him. My second pick was Luke Matheson, who obviously was at Rochdale, moved to Wolves on deadline day in January. He's a player that obviously is impressed at Rochdale, and he signed there for £1 million a day after passing his driving test, and was loaned straight back to Rochdale. He's played 29 games in all competitions this season for Rochdale, scoring 2 goals and 2 assists from right back. He made headlines at first when he scored the equaliser against United in the EFL Cup, and became Rochdale's youngest ever first team player at just 15 years and 336 days. This lad, James, is a player that obviously is getting a lot of first team minutes in League One before he signed for a Premier League club. Next season, he'll probably get less first team minutes than he got this year. But, he looks like a very good young player and a player for Wolves' future.
Yeah, I think next season I'd expect him to go out on loan again, probably to the Championship. He seems to have mastered being, a consistently available League One player. There'd be no point sending him back again because he'd just be doing the same old thing. When he played well at that level, he wouldn't gain anything else from going back there. He needs to test himself again now and step up to the Championship, because realistically, Wolves have a very strong side, especially in midfield, especially at that right wing back role. There's no point keeping him around when he might appear maybe 5 times to the first team. I think his best option is to go back out, test himself, maybe do it again the season after. And then even if he's breaking into the first team at 20, that's still younger than 90% of the other players who'll be making their debuts for their teams that season.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him, actually, because I think many will be expecting him to go out on loan. But it'll be interesting to see as well if he's kept in the youth side at Wolves until sort of January, and then gets his loan move to maybe a League One side or a Championship club again. But it'll be interesting to see if he's thrown straight in at the deep end and he's a first team player for Wolves next season. This lad looks like a very good talent, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with him going forwards. Finally, James, your last pick of the day.
The last pick is Pedro Neto. Obviously, I think we all know who he is now, but he's still only 20 years old. And I thought what was interesting about him is that his transfer fees already have totaled £30 million. Obviously signed by Lazio for £7 million on loan initially, and then made payment for another £7 million, obviously when he arrived from Braga. And then 12 years later, him and Bruno Jordão, who came together from Braga in the first place, both arrived at Wolves, I think, for about 20 million all combined. Obviously seen as big talents back in Portugal, and he's kicked off a lot more than Jordão has. He's got 4 goals, 4 assists in 35 games for the first team, and probably should have had, another goal against us, which I think was harshly ruled out. We were very lucky then.
He had one against United as well, didn't he, at Old Trafford?
Yeah. So
he's one of the only players that scored at both Anfield and Old Trafford, and both of them not counted. So
Yeah, he's been a bit unlucky there, but he's shown that he's a good player, and I think he arrived, after quite an underwhelming spell at Lazio, where I think there was stuff behind the scenes with both of the lads where they weren't getting the opportunities they were expecting. They were maybe they think it was clear that they weren't fit enough, but then for Wolves to go and spend quite big money on both of them again, I'm not too sure whether that was the reason. There was a lot of speculation there, but he's arrived and he's landed on his feet, hasn't he? Where he's consistently playing, he's getting minutes, he's getting goals, getting assists, and obviously at such a young age too, he can be moulded into whatever player that Nuno wants him to be.
Absolutely, and as we say, he's a regular now in the Wolves first team, and had a decent little season. He's benefited from Wolves playing in numerous competitions, and he's taken his opportunities with both hands, and he's played really well this season. And as you say, he's lucky not to have more goals to his name. He's famously known for that celebration for his non-goal at Anfield. But it's about time people started recognising him for his abilities on the pitch as well. I think he's a cracking player, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of numbers he gets for Wolves next season as well when he's playing more regularly in the first team there as too. So that brings this series to a close. Obviously, we've covered 20 Premier League teams now. We've got that list of all these all the players that we've mentioned, and as I've said before, we'll follow all these players throughout the season, throughout pre-season, and see what happens. We're going to make this an annual thing as well. We'll do it every year, try and pick different names. So cheers again, James. Thank you very much for this. And thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed all 4 parts of this series. And as always, if there are any names that you feel we have missed, comment. And obviously, if you like our stuff, make sure you subscribe to Redmen Academy. We're doing 1 video a day throughout this global pandemic to try and keep you lot entertained. Thank you, James, again, as always, for today. Tomorrow, we've got something exciting coming. We're joined by Maxi Angelo. So make sure you watch that one as well. Cheers, James, and ta-ra.